Today I want to talk to you about the light that the Bible says that God created in the beginning, and what kind of light that was, my thoughts and musings on that matter. And the particular verses I want to talk about is first the verses from Genesis, the Genesis account, then 1 John 1:5. Now Genesis 1:3 says, "And God said, let there be light, and there was light." And the previous verse, and that's Genesis 1:2, is that the earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the waters. And then verse 3, "Then God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness." The verse John 1:15 says, "This is the message we've heard from him and declare to you. God is light. In him there is no darkness at all." Now, it appears, and it not only appears, but pretty much all apologists argue that one of the attributes and the essence of God is light. And that light is inseparable from God. From eternity past to eternity to come, light always accompanies God, as, like I said, it is his essence and one of his unchangeable, immutable attributes. Now, the account of creation, it says, chapter 1, Genesis chapter 1, "In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. The earth was without form, etc. God said, let there be light, and there was light." So at that moment, he created light. Therefore, it logically follows that light was not before that. Now, think about it. I want you to turn on your thinking abilities and your reasoning capacities and your critical thinking. If at that moment God created light, that means there was no light before that moment. No light. And that light was neither one of the attributes of God, nor part of his eternal essence. Then it continues to say in verse 4, "And God saw the light that it was good, and God divided the light from darkness." Now, it further logically follows that light and darkness were one at one time, which is a little bit, I don't know, that's a logical fallacy. Darkness is the absence of light. And then you cannot have light and darkness mixed at one point and then separate them. And then I would argue that sometimes lack of light is good, like when you go to bed and sleep, it's better to not have light in the room. Then, in other words, some people argue that at that moment it was the source of light that was created, that is, the sun, our star. The sun. But then some apologists a lot of apologists argue that because it doesn't make sense for the sun to be created at that point. Some apologists argue that it was light itself that was created at that moment. And like I said, it really doesn't make any sense, because 1 Corinthians 14, it says that God is not the author of confusion, and it is mega obvious and mega evident that it's very, not only mega confusing, but giga contradictory. Because if God created light at that moment, that means he was not light. And 1 John 1:5 says that God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. And unless God created himself at that moment, it, like I said, logically follows that either he created himself at that moment or he created light at that moment. And that means that before that, he was darkness. I mean, God was darkness and did not possess any of his attributes, one of his attributes, which is light, and did not possess one of his essential parts, I should say, which is light again. And then in verse 16 of Genesis, first Genesis, he goes to say, and God made two great lights. The greater light, that is the sun, to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, that is the moon. And he made the stars also. So, in verse 18 it continues, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. God saw that it was good, and it was evening and morning the fourth day. Now I want to go to the previous verse, verse 4, when God saw the light, that it was good, as if he did not know that light was good before that. And once he created light, he found out that light was good and darkness was bad. And then I argue one more time that darkness is not always bad. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. Now we can assume with certain, pretty much 99.99% certainty, that it speaks about the rotation of the earth and the day and night, the changing of the day and night. And that means that since it clearly says in verse 15 and 14 that it was after he created light and many other things, he created the sun, which is the source of light of our earth. In verse 4 and 5, there are light and day, and the evening and morning, and that was the first day. It means that some light coming from somewhere either created the impression or really made light and day without the source of light, which is the sun. So it could have been God himself, and the light springing up and sprouting from him, making light and day. It could be. But like I said, light was created at that very moment, and from times immemorial, it means and it signifies that there was no light. Whatever and whoever, if we assume that there are other creations of God, and that we are not the first creation of God, and there are many others created before that, which is very unclear from the creation account. It means that they lived in darkness. All these, let's call them civilizations, unfallen worlds that were existing before that, in the universe or the cosmos or wherever, or in heaven, the creatures in heaven, like the seraphims, the cherubs, the cherubims, whatnot, the angels, They did not know light. It logically follows from that. Now, I will share with you my thoughts on how the flora and fauna on Earth survived without light in another video, which raises some other questions. But for now, that's it. And I will appreciate your comments and opinions in the section below. And thank you very much for watching and listening. And may God abundantly bless you. Until the next time, bye.